The knife dropped. Not flung. Not slipped. Dropped. Flat against the kitchen tile with a hard clap that echoed off the glass front cupboards. Frosting still clung to its edge, lemon and butter and sugar, now soured in the back of Patricia's throat. She didn't move. Didn't blink. The smell of vanilla and burnt sugar lingered in the air, but something beneath it had already curdled. Her hand was still holding the phone to her ear. Got married yesterday, Sarah's voice said again, smooth and light like it meant nothing. Only the important ones were invited. The frosting had begun to melt in the bowl, and the smell of it mixed with the faint citrus soap from the sink. The way you smell something sweet right before it spoils. Outside, the street was still, a soft breeze brushing fallen leaves across the pavement. Inside the house nothing moved. Patricia's lips parted but no words came. Her eyes weren't on the phone now, they had fixed on the cake. The one she'd started preparing 3 days ago. The one with lace-piped edges and lemon curd filling. David's favorite. Her hands had worked over it like a prayer, soft and careful, imagining his face when he'd cut the first slice. "Wait," she said finally, her voice a pale version of itself. "What do you mean you?" "Oh, you know," Sarah chirped, cutting her off. "It was very low-key. Just special people. We didn't want a big fuss." The sound that came out of Patricia then wasn't a word. It wasn't even a breath. More like something slipping out of her body. Before she could ask another question, Sarah added, "David's a little tied up right now, but we'll give you a ring later." "Okay." That was the sound. Not a beep. Not static. Just the clean, clipped end of a call. Patricia didn't move for a full minute. Just stood, shoulders pinched, the faint smell of cake and citrus and tile cleaner clogging her chest. Then she bent down, picked up the knife and washed it under the tap with a slow, careful rhythm. Water rushing, frosting slipping away like none of it had ever mattered. "Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming." She didn't cry. Not yet. Not when she sat down at the table, not when she scrolled her feed, and not when she found it. There they were. David in a pale gray suit, tie slightly off-center like he always wore it. Sarah in a white dress with delicate straps and a train like mist. Caption read, "Married my soulmate yesterday. Couldn't have asked for a more beautiful day with the ones who matter most. Ring sparkles white heart. The ones who matter most." Patricia zoomed in. Her fingers trembled just a little. There was Sarah's mother standing right next to her. And behind them, a neighbor. The one who once borrowed Patricia's ladder and never returned it. A whiff of something sharp broke through the cake smell. Her coffee, cold now, sitting untouched beside the frosting bowl. She stood. Fully. Then opened the cupboard, pulled out her old red notebook and started flipping through it. There. David's rent log. $1,200 in March. $950 in April. $320 car bill. $80 gas. $400 groceries when Sarah lost her job. She didn't cry. Not even when she added it all together with the back of a grocery receipt and a pen that barely worked. Almost $47,000. She closed the book. And finally she let out a sound, not a sob but something else. A single breath through the nose. Like a laugh that forgot how to be funny. 3 hours later the doorbell rang. Patricia was still in the kitchen wiping the counters. The smell of the lemon cake had faded now, replaced by a faint mix of cleaning spray and something sharper, rawer. She opened the door. Sarah stood there holding a paper bag. A store-bought chocolate cake inside, the kind with thick, too-sweet frosting and a smudge of cream on the lid. "Thought I'd stop by," she said, smiling tightly. Patricia didn't speak. Sarah stepped in without waiting, placed the bag on the counter. She looked around the kitchen like she was inspecting something. "Nice place," she said, brushing her hands together. "Did you redecorate?" Patricia looked at the cake on the counter. Sarah followed her gaze, then spoke quickly. "Look, I know the wedding was sudden. It just kinda happened. David didn't want stress and neither did I. You know how these things go." Patricia said nothing. "We're family," Sarah added a little too quickly. "That's what matters." And then she reached out. Lightly. Touched Patricia's arm. A soft touch. Barely there. Patricia stepped back. There was a beat of silence. Then Sarah said it again. "It wasn't personal." That's when Patricia walked to the trash, opened the lid and dropped the entire lemon cake in. Not slowly. Just lifted it and let it fall. the thick, pretty frosting smearing against the sides of the bean with a wet, sticky thud. Sarah blinked. "What are you?" But Patricia turned calmly and spoke her first full sentence since the call. "I wasn't invited because I'm not important." Sarah opened her mouth then closed it. Her hand moved to her purse like she might steady herself with it. "You're being dramatic," she said. "It wasn't like that." Patricia didn't argue. She only said, "Please leave." "David," Sarah started. "Tell him he made his choice." Sarah stepped back slowly. At the door she paused. "You're going to regret this. You'll lose him." Patricia looked up at her then past her into the late afternoon light. "I already did." The door closed behind her. And for a moment the kitchen was still again. Only now the smell was different. No cake. No cleaner. Just air. And something inside Patricia that had always been full, finally emptying out. The door clicked shut behind Sarah. It wasn't loud. But it stayed in the air longer than it should have, like sound echoing in an empty church. Patricia stood still for a few seconds, her hands still resting on the edge of the countertop. The lid of the trash bin remained open, the lemon cake inside beginning to slump under its own weight. She reached over and pressed the lid down. Fully. Carefully. Like she was closing a casket. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. She turned and walked back to the kitchen sink. Turned on the water. Not hot, just cool enough to sting a little on her dry hands. She stood there rinsing the invisible sugar from her skin. The smell of the cake was gone now. All that was left was the faint chemical scent of bleach and lemon dish soap. On the counter sat Sarah's cake, still inside its plastic store box, frosting pressed awkwardly against the lid. Patricia looked at it for a long while. She didn't touch it. Instead she opened the fridge and moved a few things around, not to make room just for the feel of it. Then she placed the cake inside on the bottom shelf, right behind a half-used jar of fig jam that David had once called pretend food. She closed the fridge and stood there in the silence. Her eyes drifted to the sideboard drawer, the one with all the notes and receipts she didn't like to look at too often. She opened it, pulled out a single envelope. Thick, rubber-banded. She walked to the table. Saturday. Her fingers were steady as she opened it. Inside, receipts, checks and printouts. A rental contract with her signature. A credit card statement with Sarah's name on it but mailed to Patricia's address. A post-it note torn at the corner written in David's hand. "We'll pay you back. Promise. Thanks again, Mom." She held the note up to the light. It was written in pencil. She didn't say much the next few days. Didn't call her sister. Didn't answer her neighbor's knock when they brought by soup, just because. He cleaned out the freezer. Wiped down the baseboards. Paused at every photo in the hallway. David's school portrait. Grade 6. Crooked tooth too big sweater. David on a bike. Helmet too tight. Grinning. David and Sarah at her old dining table holding wine glasses and laughing at something just out of frame. He paused longest at that one. She walked to the living room, sat down with her tablet and opened her banking app. The screen lit up too bright in the dim afternoon light. 2 auto transfers glowed green in the schedule list. Rent and car loan. Set monthly. Uninterrupted since 2021. She hovered over the cancel button for the rent first. Took a deep breath. Click. Then the car. Clicked again. The screen asked, "Are you sure?" She didn't answer. Just hit confirm. No sound came from her. No sigh of relief. No muttered curse. Just silence, while the heater ticked in the corner and a pair of mourning doves outside pecked at the dry birdseed. That night, Patricia didn't sleep well. Not from sadness but from stillness. Her body was so used to bracing for something. A call, a text, an ask. Without it, she just lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, her hands folded across her stomach like she was waiting. In the morning she got up early and walked to the edge of her small garden. The roses were thinning now, late bloomers still clinging to the stems, like guests who didn't know the party had ended. She trimmed them gently, whispering to herself under her breath. Not words, just rhythm. The neighbor's cat brushed against her leg. She let it. At noon she made tea and sat in the sun by the window. A beam of light fell across her knee, warming the flannel of her pajama pants. Her phone buzzed. Not David. A number she didn't recognize. She let it ring 4 times. Then picked up. Patricia. Sarah's voice again. This time tight. No smile. Yes. The rent didn't go through. I know. Pause. You stopped it. I did. Another pause. Sarah let out a breath. I'm not sure what you expect us to do. You'll figure it out. You're serious? Yes. More silence. The kind that fills a room like smoke. Thick. Slow. You could have at least warned us, Sarah said. We're barely making it work right now. This is cruel. Patricia didn't raise her voice. Just answered steady, quiet like stone. You didn't warn me either. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of all the things Sarah wanted to say and didn't. Then, David's been really stressed. I imagine he has. He said you'd understand. That you wouldn't cut us off like this. Patricia looked out the window. A squirrel darted across the fence line, carrying something too big for its mouth. When you got married, she said calmly, you said you only invited the important people. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. This isn't the same. It is. You can't compare. I'm not comparing, she said. I'm answering. There was a long stretch of silence. Then very quietly Sarah said, you're going to lose him over this. Patricia nodded to herself. I think I already did. The line clicked dead. She didn't cry. Instead she stood, opened the fridge, took out the plastic box cake and without ceremony, dumped it in the trash. She washed her hands. Put the kettle on. A knock at the door broke the quiet. Her heart beat once, hard. She opened it. David stood there. Hair uncombed. Hoodie stained. Eyes red. He didn't speak right away. Just looked at her. Like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. You really stopped the payments? She nodded. He stared past her into the kitchen. I can't believe this. Patricia stepped aside but didn't let him in. He didn't try to push past her. But his face twisted, not in anger. Not fully. In disbelief. Like the ground under him was different now and he didn't know how to stand on it. We needed that money, he said. I know. He looked up. How could you do this now? After everything? Patricia met his eyes. You got married without me. His jaw clenched. That was Sarah's decision. And yours was letting her. Silence. You said you were family, he said. You always said we stick together. She took a breath, steady. Family does stick together, she said. But not when love turns into a bill. He flinched like she slapped him, but there was no sound, no movement. Just the hit of truth landing in a quiet room. I can't believe you're doing this, he said. I know. He turned then. Walked down the steps. She watched him go. Didn't call after him. Didn't close the door. Just stood there while the wind came up and lifted a few leaves across the porch. For the first time in years she felt no need to explain herself. The door stayed open long after David walked away, letting the cold air slip into the hallway. Patricia didn't close it at first. She just stood there watching the space her son had been standing in. As if the air might somehow hold the shape of him for a moment longer. A soft smell drifted in with the breeze. Rain on pavement though the sky was still dry. She stepped back inside, pressed the door shut and leaned her forehead gently against it. The wood felt cool. Thought. Nothing like the wobbling ache in her chest. In the kitchen the kettle had begun to whine. She moved toward it, her slippers brushing softly against the floor. She turned off the stove, poured the water into her mug and watched the tea bag swell and darken the water. Steam rose in a slow, delicate curl, carrying the faint smell of chamomile. It should have been calming. It wasn't. She set the mug down and walked toward the living room. The sun had moved across the floor, sliding away from the window and leaving the carpet in a flat, quiet shadow. She sat in her chair, the one she always used when David called, the one angled near the window so she could see the street, see if he was coming. She didn't look at the street now. She looked at her hands. They were still, resting in her lap, but the skin around her knuckles felt tight. Like something inside wanted to pull them into fists and something else wanted to let go completely. She wasn't angry. She wasn't calm. She was suspended. Somewhere between both. A faint vibration buzzed on the coffee table. Her phone. Not ringing. Just the low hum of a notification slipping across the screen. Her breath caught without her meaning it to. She leaned forward slowly and turned it over. A message. Not from David. From her bank. A reminder that the next payment date was approaching. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then deleted the message without opening it. Felt like cutting a thread. A very old one. Later that afternoon she went outside. Not far, just to the edge of the yard where the grass dipped slightly before rising toward the sidewalk. A faint smell of dry leaves and cold earth mixed with the scent of the wet mulch around her roses. She knelt to pick a few dried petals from the soil. Her knees cracked softly under her weight. The sound startled her more than it should have. She stayed there a moment, hands in the dirt, breathing slowly. A car drove by, too slow, and she looked up. Not David. But she watched it anyway, letting her eyes follow it until it turned the corner and disappeared behind the maple tree at the end of the block. She stood, brushed her palms off on her jeans and went back inside. The house felt different. Not haunted. Just rearranged. Like someone had moved the walls a few inches while she was outside. She walked through each room almost without thinking. Bedroom. Bathroom. Hall. Kitchen. Living room. Everything was fine. Everything was the same. But nothing felt familiar. She paused at the hallway mirror. Her reflection stared back at her. Softer eyes, tired mouth, hair tied loosely at the back. She lifted a hand and touched the glass, not because she meant to, but because it felt like the only way to check if the woman looking back was really her. She lowered her hand. She went to the couch. Saturday. Picked up her notebook. Not the ledger this time. A different one. A quiet one. The kind people write in when they don't want anyone to know they're writing anything at all. She opened to a blank page and wrote one sentence. Not long. Not dramatic. Just, I am allowed to keep what is mine. She didn't underline it. Didn't decorate it. Just closed the notebook and set it aside. Evening came slowly. The kind of slow that presses its weight against the windows first, then the walls, then the floorboards. She made dinner. A simple plate of eggs and toast. She ate half. Left the rest untouched. When the dishes were washed and the lights turned low, she sat back in her chair by the window. The sky had turned dark blue, almost black. Street lamps flickered on one by one. A dog barked somewhere down the block. A child's laugh cut through the night, then faded. He felt tired but not sleepy. More like someone waiting for something heavy to settle so she could stand up again. She closed her eyes. And the knock came. Soft at first. Then firmer. She opened her eyes slowly, like someone waking from a shallow dream. She stood, walked to the door and opened it only a crack. Her breath stilled. Sarah stood there. Alone. No smile this time. No polite expression. Just a tight jaw, red eyes, and the faint smell of perfume layered over stale tears. She wasn't holding anything. Not a gift. Not an excuse. Just herself. Patricia, she said quietly. We need to talk. Patricia didn't open the door wider. Didn't step aside. Just kept her hand on the frame. Sarah looked down at her shoes, then back up, voice trembling but controlled. David said you told him something. Something about choosing. About losing him. Patricia didn't answer. Didn't nod. Didn't deny. Sarah swallowed hard and whispered. You shouldn't have said that to him. Her voice cracked. You broke him. Something inside Patricia shifted. Not forward, not backward. Just sideways. Not guilt. Not anger. But something between. She didn't speak. And Sarah, seeing the silence, let the truth slip out in a thin, ugly tremor. He thinks you don't love him anymore. Patricia felt the words hit her. Not loud. But deep. Too deep. Her hand tightened on the doorframe without her meaning it to. And before she could answer, before she could speak one word, Sarah said something even quieter. Something that would turn the night in a direction Patricia hadn't expected. He's not here to talk to you, Sarah whispered. He's not home. She hesitated, then added, He left. He left. Those two words hung in the air like the last note of a funeral bell. Not shouted. Not explained. Just dropped there between them. Patricia didn't answer right away. She didn't ask where or why or how long. She just stood. The hallway light spilled across Sarah's face, and in that yellow glow she didn't look cruel anymore. She looked lost. He packed a bag and walked out, Sarah said softly. 3 days ago. He didn't even say where he was going. Patricia blinked. Still no words. Sarah stepped back, arms folded now like she was holding herself together. You were supposed to be the one who grounded him, she said. You were always the one who made things make sense. Patricia tilted her head slightly. She looked at the woman in front of her, the woman who had once borrowed her smile, her comfort, her kitchen table, her money. And now stood here looking for something else. I can't fix what he doesn't want to face, Patricia said quietly. Sarah's lips parted, but she didn't speak. Not yet. I thought, Patricia continued, that if I kept giving he'd come closer. But all I did was teach him to take. Sarah flinched. Then finally let the guard drop. He hasn't spoken to me either, she said, voice dry. I thought maybe he'd gone to you. Patricia shook her head once. Sarah reached into her coat pocket and pulled something out, a small, folded slip of paper. She held it out. He left this. Patricia didn't move to take it at first. Then slowly she reached forward. The paper was warm from Sarah's hand. She unfolded it. The handwriting was messy, rushed. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I need space. Mom. I'm sorry. That was it. No name. No details. Just a short line from the boy she once taught to write his name on lined paper in 2nd grade. She stared at the words for a long moment, then folded the paper and slid it into her sweater pocket. Sarah was watching her like someone waiting for a verdict. I don't want your money, Sarah said quietly. I know that's what you think. Patricia didn't respond. But I didn't mean to shut you out, she added. The wedding, she stopped herself. Then sighed. It was my family's idea. Small. Polished. Perfect. I thought he'd tell you, but he didn't. And I didn't push him to. She looked down. I regret that. Patricia finally spoke. I waited for that phone call for 4 years, she said. Every payment. Every thank you. I thought I was building a bridge. Turns out I was just buying silence. Sarah looked up, her face tightening. You think I don't care, she said. But I've been holding everything up by threads too. You weren't the only one keeping things together. Patricia nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time we both stopped doing that. A quiet passed between them, not comfortable, not hostile. Just the space between two women standing in the ruins of a house they didn't realize they were both trying to live in. Sarah cleared her throat. If you hear from him. Patricia nodded. I'll tell him you came. Sarah lingered another second, then turned and walked down the steps. The sound of her boots on concrete faded fast. No goodbye. Just gone. Patricia closed the door and leaned her forehead against it again. Just like that night. But this time her shoulders didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. She stepped into the kitchen, made tea and sat. She read the note again. Ran her fingers over the ink like it might come off on her skin. She didn't cry. Instead she stood, opened the drawer beside the fridge and pulled out a brochure. It was something she'd saved a long time ago. A photo of a rocky coastline, a small inn perched over crashing waves, fog curling at the edges like a secret waiting to be kept. She picked up the phone and made a call. Yes, I'd like to confirm a reservation, she said. Her voice was steady. 1 week later. The sky above the coast was low and gray, and the salt wind snapped at Patricia's coat as she stepped onto the inn's wooden deck. The ocean below sounded like it was breathing. Slow, patient, pulling in and out. She held a paper cup of coffee, the lid warm against her palm. Around her, strangers moved, talking softly, laughing over shared meals. No one asked anything of her. She walked toward the edge of the overlook, and then stopped. There, on the far bench, someone was sitting. Back turned. Hoodie pulled up. Her breath caught. She didn't move closer. Just waited. And slowly the figure turned. David. Thin. Pale. Tired. He saw her. And didn't smile. Didn't run to her. He just nodded. Patricia took a step forward. Then another. Then sat beside him. Neither of them spoke. The waves rolled beneath them, loud and slow. And between them sat a quiet no longer made of guilt. Just space. The kind people give when they've stopped pretending they're owed anything. They sat like that a long time. Then David said softly. I didn't know how to say it, but I know you were right. Patricia looked at him. And the wind carried the scent of seaweed, salt, and something sharp and clean. I know, she said. That was all. That was enough.